Hi everyone, welcome back to our backend series. In this video, we are going to continue our journey and we are going to write the router file, which will allow us to achieve the functionalities of the controller and the function to make them work into action that the functions we have already written. So what is the use of a route file actually? In backend development, routes are actually essential for defining how a server or a API responds to particular requests which are made by the front end. So what do you mean by request? So when we are writing the controller, we have seen that we obtain two parameters as a function from a function, right? One is the request and one is the response. Now there are various ways for HTTP. Since we are dealing with HTTP and we are writing REST APIs, that is representational state transfer APIs. So for HTTP and REST APIs, there are mainly four ways of how you obtain a particular request or how you process a particular request. So there are HTTP GET request, HTTP POST request, HTTP PUT request, and at last we have the HTTP delete request. Apart from this, there are also other requests which the HTTP can process, but these are the four major things which we use in production. So I have obtained a good article by Postman, if you can see here. So it says that HTTP methods are, what are HTTP methods, right? So HTTP methods are used to indicate an action that an API client would like to perform or would like the backend to perform. So API client means the front-end application on a given resource. So what is HTTP and how it is related to REST? You can have a reading through. So what are the HTTP methods? There are GET methods, which we commonly use for getting some information from the backend side. There is a POST method also, if you see this. So there is a POST method also. So there is a POST method which is used to send some data as a payload to the backend side. That is, when you submit a particular form from the front end, you actually send it to the POST request. All right. The last thing is the PUT, followed by the patch. PUT is also when you want to update a particular status of a particular item in the database, we send the PUT request. Apart from this, there is patch request also, delete request also. So you can have a look by reading them. Okay, so they are quite easier to understand. So it says that which HTTP methods are safe, which are idempotent. So you can have a read by going to the article by Postman. So Postman is a very popular API client for testing the backend applications. We will also test our backend application controllers which we have written so far using Postman in the next video only. So you can understand what are HTTP methods and what is the GET request, what is the PUT request, and like all these requests by having a read through this article written by the people at Postman. So very well written article. I have loved it. You can also have a look at it. Now coming back to routes. So what are routes? In backend development, routes are essential for triggering a particular function in the backend side. Now from the front end side, you cannot directly call the function which you have written in the backend side. You can only hit an endpoint which is exposed by the backend side. In the front end side, you can hit that API and you can make a particular function work. Now to make that particular function work and to assign every endpoint to a particular function, we write routes. Now in most of the, I would not say most of the, in many of the backend application, you will see that all the routes, everything about the backend routes and the API endpoints are written in a single app.js file. But that's not the ideal way when you are writing a large scale backend application, because we have to make sure that our code looks clean and maintainable as well. So for that, we make a separate router folder. For a separate controller, we define separate routes. Similarly, if we go to our code base, we have two controllers over here. One is the user controller and one is the to-do controller. In the user controller, we have two functionalities. One is to create a particular user and one is to log him. Okay. The next thing in the to-do controller is that we have four functionalities, that is mainly the CRUD operations with to-do. So as I have said that it's always better to keep the code maintainable and easier to understand. So we will define two router files, and from that router file we will expose the endpoints, with hitting which endpoints the functions will be called accordingly. So let's go to our code editor and we will start writing the endpoints for the routes. So to write routes, just click on the routes folder and make the routes. So we are going to make for the user controller first. So it will be user.routes.js. Okay, user.routes.js. So Express gives us a functionality of a function called router, import router, which allows us to create routes in the routes file. Well enough. So how to do this? Remember that this is capital R, right? So we have to define a variable router, let it be router, and it will be invoking the function router equal to router, right? So the next thing is router.route. So this is the place where you define the endpoint. So since I'm making the user route, so if I hit the endpoint create or sign up, same thing, or say sign up, I want to create an user. So when you're creating the user, you are actually sending the details from the front end side about the user's mail, his name, his password from the front end side. So since we are sending data from the front end side, it will be post request. So let us write post sign up dot post. And what is the function that you want to call? You want to call the sign up function, which we have created in the user controller. See, right? So we have to call the sign up function. And did we export the function? Yeah, we have exported the function from the user controller. So I'm sorry. So let's import that. So sign up. Okay, it's not coming by default. So let's import it. Import, sorry, sign up and login from user controller.js, and let's write sign up over here, right? So when my endpoint hits /sign up, it will be a post request since we are sending data from the front end side about the user's mail, his password, his name. So it will be post request, and where this post request will route, this post request will route to the sign up function. Good. Next thing is router.route login, and similarly it is a post request since we are obtaining the email ID and password from the front end side. It will go to the login page, login function. Okay. Next thing, at last we will export the things which we have created, export default router that we have created. Fine. So this was about the user controller, which is allowing us to create the user and log in a particular user. Now once I have created my user route, the next thing which I have to do is I have to create the to do route. Okay, routes for the to do. So let's go to the route folder once again and let's write to do.routes.js. So to do.routes.js. So you have to import the things which is the router, as simple as that, as we have done in the user controller only, from the Express. So just remove this. Okay. Now we have to create endpoints for hitting this 4 functions: delete to do, update to do status, read to do, and create a particular to do. So to do that, remember the first thing, which is creating a to do. We are sending data from the front end side to the back end side. So it will be a post request, obviously. So just make const router equal to router, and then router.route. First is when you want to create a particular to do. Okay, it is a post request since we are sending some data from the front end side, and we'll call the create to do function. So we have to import the create to do function. Let's see if it happens automatically or not. Create to do. Okay, so we have to import it. Import create to do. Create to do. Okay. So from the to do controller.js, we have to import these 4 functionalities and we will call them accordingly. Create to do. Once this is done, the next thing is to router.route, read a particular to do of a particular user. And how we are sending the user's email? By the request.body only. We have seen in the previous video. So let it be post request. Let it be a post request. Okay. So since we are sending read by user email. Let us write it like read by user. So let the endpoint be like this. Once that is done, router.route read by user, we are sending a post request to the read user to do function. Last thing is when you want to update a particular to do status. Now in this case, we don't need a post request explicitly, because since here we are trying to obtain the update to do status and we are sending query, we can simply do it with the get request. Similarly for the delete to do also, since we are accessing the query, we can do it from the get request only, right? So let's go to the to do router. So router dot route and update status, simply write update. Okay, since we do not have any other functionality corresponding to update. Okay, get and update to do status. And at last, similarly, router.route delete get request. Since we are doing it from the params only, we are obtaining the to do id from the query. I'm sorry, not params. So delete to do, so it will get from the query side. And at last, export default the router. So this is the router files which we have created for the backend. So on hitting this /create /read by user /update, we can invoke the particular functions to do the particular functionality on our to do. So that's all about the user controller and the to do controller. On hitting these endpoints, we can call our functions from the front end side. So that's all in this video. I will see you in the next video where we will write the app.js file and we will directly start testing our backend application using the Postman. So that's all in this video. I will see you in the next video.